Electrocast.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Ever met a foundation that does it all? Say hi to NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. Makeup meets skincare in a bottle. It evens skin tone, blurs imperfections, and has a natural radiant finish. Plus, it's formulated with skincare ingredients to help strengthen your skin's barrier. With a newly expanded shade range of over 40 radiant shades to choose from and buildable all-day wear. NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. Find your perfect match.
Hold on to your butts.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Wesley demands.
Now this affects Iris. Iris, where are you?
What you feel only matters to you.
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
Iris, I have a tip for you.
Don't take drugs!
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up? It's still Oscar season, and this is still Or Whatever Movies. I'm still your co-host, Iris, and I'm here with my older brother.
And tour guide, Wesley, because today I'll be taking us through the movie A Real Pain, nominated for Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards, written, directed, produced, starring Jesse Eisenberg. And yet, despite the fact that this movie is all about Jesse Eisenberg, this movie is really all about Kieran Culkin's Benji. Would you disagree?
Benji certainly makes it about himself.
So, in your opinion, what is the name of Benji's condition?
I was just thinking to myself in preparation for this discussion that I wasn't going to armchair diagnose Benji Kaplan. I mean, there's definitely narcissism and depression, which doesn't mean that you're sad or that you love yourself all the time, right? There are the highs and lows that come with these psychological conditions.
I was trying to figure him out. He's so far ahead of David. It's like he's super clever, waiting for him to give whatever bullshit answer he gives so he can move on to the next thing that he wants to talk about. It's like he's so clever, but then he won't light a path for his cousin to trail behind him, won't wait for him, doesn't acknowledge his discomfort when he suggests that he's, taking pot through the Warsaw airport. But he didn't, but he's not telling David that. Benji's like letting him believe. And when he's like, oh, what, you thought I was carrying it through the airport? And he's like, yeah. Oh, I thought that was just you, freaking out, doing your nebbish thing or whatever by not standing up to me. I thought he was kind of had him on the line and is letting him twist. And that made me from the beginning distrustful of Benji because I couldn't figure him out. So the question I had about that is whether or not Benji's character is so carefully constructed, crafted to feel disingenuous, to be suspicious of him. What was your impression about how carefully Jesse Eisenberg was controlling this movie?
Jesse Eisenberg wrote the David character toward his type and played to his strength and road mapped the Benji character for Kieran Culkin. But I have the benefit of having attended the PGA Awards nominees breakfast, where Allie Harding, the producer, represented A Real Pain. She told the story about how they got Kieran Culkin on board. Like, they didn't really know, was he going to come on? And then Kieran Culkin gets to the set, and they're like, did you read the script? He's like, yeah, kind of. Let's go for it. And therein lies the tension, right, between the David and Benji character. And I think that it turns into magic on the screen. Was it really tense for a while for Jesse Eisenberg and his crew? It sounds like it. But it was also something that they knew was, yielding great performances. In fact, I think Allie Harding said that the cinematographer was this great balance between the two, where Jesse Eisenberg had this perfectly crafted in his mind, and Kieran Culkin walks onto set and he wants to improv. And the cinematographer was very prepared, but also is able to improv and able to shoot on the fly. And because, Jesse Eisenberg's in the majority of the scenes. How fortunate for him that his cinematographer could be so flexible, especially when they are picking up so much of the directorial slack.
Man, are you suggesting that Kieran Culkin came into this like methody and was trying to throw Jesse Eisenberg off balance because that's how their character dynamic is going to be?
Not methody in the sense that, he came on stoned or in a funk, but yeah, in the sense that some of the throwing off of the David character was real.
It's impossible to watch this movie and not take a side. And I was on David's side. I couldn't help it. I don't think I was quite as neurotic. Is that a surprise?
Is it a surprise that you were on David's side?
Yeah, that I wasn't sure. I was suspicious of the Benji character. I couldn't tell when Eloge is talking about escaping the genocide. I couldn't tell if he was mocking.
Snap.
Right, but I couldn't tell if Benji was mocking him. And you can see in David's face, he's like looking at him and looking back and like sorry about him and like not sure because he's being seemingly inappropriate in this sort of guise or the facade of being supportive or sympathetic, empathetic. I never know the difference between those two, but I didn't trust him. When he said, I'm here on this, and now we're here on this geriatric Polish tour with you fine folks or whatever, I was like, wait, was that an insult? I mean, there were some geriatrics.
Is it surprising to me that you sympathized with David? No. Sympathy being, of course, feeling something for someone, and empathize meaning that you can relate, that you feel similarly.
Whose tour is this? I'm the tour guide. Thank you for the education and insight. You're the first person in my 5 years of doing this, quite literally for this podcast, who's given me actionable feedback. And I thank you for it.
Wait, that was a tour guide.
That's what James says to Benji at the end. When everybody comes at him, everybody is like, what a troubled young man. And don't pay any attention to him and all this stuff. And then almost all of them are like, you made a real connection. Thank you for this insight. Let me give you a hug. Kind of bizarre.
And then like the second best moment in the movie when James is like, thanks, David, and then turns away.
Begging the question.
The best moment in the movie, he's talking about his grandma, how much he loves her. And then he talks about how everybody else in his life has abandoned him. And then he gives this little offhanded squeak, like, and it's so perfectly Benji, and it's so iconically Kieran Culkin. So you said suspicious is the word. I think that's an interesting word because it implies that you're trying to figure this person out, which is so not my approach to the Benji character. I learned long ago that it's just not worth trying to figure out the crazy. Like I'm not going to get sucked in, right?
I suppose if it was just me and Benji on a tour, then I'd be like, well, because he does seem to have him figured out. He has his sort of breakdown monologue at the dinner table when he talks about when the revelation that he OD'd on pills, but he understands. Whereas I didn't understand. And so I spent too much time trying to figure it out. Maybe these two, David and Benji, are just on uncomplimentary wavelengths. Their peaks and valleys don't sync up. And everything is contrary and there's friction. Remember, they're sitting at the table and he's like, weird soup, right? When he draws him in to the conversation about what's going on with Jennifer Grey. Jennifer Grey, by the way.
Oh, it's so great. She's
Jennifer
so great.
Grey. Anyway, he's like, yeah, and, talking about, and then he shows his husband, and she's got this new dude. He seems like a douchebag. And he's like, why? And he's like, well, we shouldn't be talking about it behind her back. That's kind of jacked up, right? It's so awkward. And then he's like, and then he tries to like change the subject. It's a weird soup, right? And he's like, I fucking love it. It's just so uncomplimentary the whole time. He tells him to get up, to go into the bathroom, and does the little slider thing and was like, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for me, with me. I'm like, oh, it's so intimate, and yet it feels so disingenuous. It kind of bothered me. And so I suspected that he's really smart, he's manipulative, and he believes David to be in his wake and is manipulating him accordingly. And so I didn't trust him. I also thought that he was capable of random violent outbursts, and I was waiting for them to happen, which is where the underlying tension comes into play. But it was more like I was trying to figure out if there was a way David could rein Benji in, if there was hope that this vacation, this tour, could come out okay, or if it was just destined for failure.
As we learn that the trip is for Benji, that helps me understand why David is kind of so tolerant. Like, they're there to hopefully help him get closure on their grandmother's passing, which has apparently had a really negative effect on him. And David's scared. He's worried about his cousin. I understand why David is kind of allowing himself to be manipulated, even strung along. That it's only really a success if Benji finds some healing and closure.
Benji said, you dropped everything to be here with me, and I really appreciate it. And as fake as that felt, it was only tonally, because I did come to accept that when Benji is being earnest, it's very truthful and honest and real, which I think is what the reason most people respond. But I do think it was intentionally against the grain too much of the time. Of all things that Kelly Ray picked up on, he said, wash your face, floss your butt, or whatever. Basically, brush your teeth before we go smoke. And she's like, is that not like orange juice after you brush your teeth? Like, why would you brush your teeth and then go smoke pot? But he gets stoned and then apologizes for calling it. What did he say? He said he gets stoned and said, sorry, I called you a tight ass or something, or said that you weren't fun. And I thought, you can't be conniving and manipulative when you're stoned. You can't be on and controlling like that. And then the outburst on the train happened, and he's like scratching his neck. And that's where I realized that Benji is not in control. He's not manipulating everyone else. He's effectively alienating himself when he gets outbursty. So I finally understood that the things he says are not part of his grander design. He's actually hurting his credibility with these people, or his control, by being all outbursty and then stomping away. So that's when I began to shift.
And what, sympathize with Benji?
No, because that's actually when I liked him the least, where he kind of guilt trips him. Like, no, I'm proud of my snoring cousin. I'm not going to be ashamed of you. And that's why I didn't wake you up when we clearly passed our tour stop, where everyone else got off and for some reason collected our bags for us. Boy, that was nice. But that was so annoying that he was conscious of the fact that they overran their tour stop and didn't do anything about it. That's where I kind of hated him for a moment.
Yeah. Doesn't he say something about you've got a really twisted sense of reality, or your priorities aren't right? I think David sums up Benji's character pretty aptly. If you don't think that he's manipulating the entire situation and that he's got it all figured out, then you realize that he's just in pain and he's just got priorities that don't line up with most of society's. Like, number one, conforming and not rocking the boat. Like, he's perfectly happy to rock the boat, especially if it's in service of what he thinks is being real. And he is often real. Like, his bullshit meter is pretty spot on. And people are attracted to honesty and realness because it allows for intimacy in a way that David's character is kind of not really available for. I mean, I don't feel bad for David, right? He's got this lovely life at home. He obviously connects with his family. Like, he's got his tribe, and he doesn't need to get that everywhere else, maybe, like Benji does. But he also has these walls up, perhaps societally appropriately so, when it comes to the tour group that Benji doesn't have. David talks a lot about how he admires Benji. And it's kind of weird because I can see a little bit of myself in both of these characters, but ultimately I find that Benji doesn't light up a room for me. I find that he takes out the air. And I find him kind of insufferable, really. I find him attention-seeking, selfish. As much as he talks about wanting to connect and be real, does he attempt to meaningfully connect with David? Or is he just manipulating him the whole time? Ultimately, I kind of find him to be a very sympathetic villain.
But still, with sympathy, you recognize that because he is unwell, that maybe he deserves sympathy, but that's not a condonement for his actions. Condonement, is that a word? Consider this. He has his outburst and huffs off to the back of the train. And old dude is like, we're not going to find a lot of suffering back there either, pal, or whatever. Maybe his best line. Then, did you not see the hypocrisy of him laughing later in first class? Where he, talked about how absurd it is. He's like, we're in first class. And he's like, oh, we deserve it. And then they laugh. It's like, that's weird. Later on, when James comes up to him and says, you gave me the only actionable note. And he's like, well, get out of here. What did I say? I was like, wait, does Benji not remember telling James to engage or to back off or to be a better tour guide? So does he actually not remember that he had that diatribe about first class? Does he not remember going off on James? Or is he so far ahead of the situation that he's just like letting James have letting him get out his apology or his gratefulness for berating him in the middle of his tour? It was so clear that James, it stuck with him and it hurt his feelings. And he was like, I was going to do a stone on the headstone to show that he's not. And he's like, that's beautiful, man. I mean, it's your tour. Go do it. That's great. We came up with that together. And he just vacillates away. Benji is already back to the other extreme, and you can see where it sticks with James. And that's when I began to think, maybe I can't hate this dude because he's not manipulating. Maybe he doesn't remember. Maybe he honestly can't recall the lows. Maybe it's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing. I know that's being extreme, but I was continually trying to figure Benji out.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Since you're new to H&R Block, we'll look at your returns from the last 3 years for any money your last guy might have missed for free.
I could get money back from last year?
You could. We'll find any mistakes.
Could have really used that 2 years ago when I dated that mistake for 5 months.
Don't leave money on the table. Switch to H&R Block and get a free second look review. Second look is included at no additional cost with the purchase of tax preparation. Results vary. All tax situations are different. Fees apply if you have us file an amended return.
I can feel you doing it.
Yep.
I can feel you trying to suck me in. I'm not going to do it. Why? Why try to figure out what's true and what's not when it's all kind of a shade of gray with Benji?
Because that's how you help him.
I mean, maybe I'm callous, but I can't make Benji's problems mine.
Man, you know what you sound like to me? You sound like me talking about Kanye. As of this recording, Kanye is doing some dumb stuff, like really dumb stuff. But the dude is forthright about his mental health. He was like, yeah, I mean, I'm bipolar, but I can't take the meds because they mess me up. I'm like, oh, well, I can't rail on him because he's obviously ill. Then he says, I'm a Nazi, quote unquote. And I'm like, whoa. And then immediately he's like, I found out I'm autistic. And I'm like, oh, man. But that's not a justification.
No, it's not. My friend Kim has a saying, it's okay. You're allowed to be autistic. But I'm sorry, you're not allowed to be an asshole.
Yep. Accountability. It's very important.
And so there's a certain amount of kind of latitude, maybe even leeway that I can allow for a character like Benji. But it's also, it's a little bit like, yeah, I mean, you gotta, I don't know. My only solution for it is like, I tend to disengage.
Oh, and I'm not conflating this with mental illness, but you know that one of my tenets has always been, particularly when it comes to romantic relationships, what's rule number one? Safety C. SAFTC. Stay away from the crazies. And of course there's Kanye crazy. And then there's Benji crazy. And they're very different things. But Jesse Eisenberg David has no choice but to try to support him, to help him, to invite him to dinner, to condone his actions in the moment for the most part, and then apologize afterwards. Is the trade-off of his colorful, wonderful side worth it? they're pulled in to spite themselves to pose with the statue when he's enacting, like he's like being a Polish soldier with them. Kind of swells and everybody's happy, and the old guy is even making machine gunning sounds, and Eloge is like wrapping the dude's leg with his scarf because he's a medic. And it's so infectious. Is it worth it? Because he doesn't do his downslide in private. He will do it on the train or at dinner at inopportune times.
Yeah, it is a trade-off, which the majority of the tour seemed to think it's worth it. They seemed to think that he brought a realness, a rawness that was welcomed. That was what the Jennifer Grey character needed, apparently, in her tumultuous time. James was affected by him, ultimately positively. Eloge seemed like he let it slide. Doesn't he say something really early on where he's like, I welcome whatever you might ask me?
Yeah.
It seemed like ultimately, net, he had a positive effect on this tour. But could it have still been a positive tour and perhaps a less roller coastery one, a more steady one, had Benji not been there? Had it been just David? I think it would have been a perfectly serviceable, happy tour. I mean, maybe a little less memorable.
On that note, in terms of memorable tour, when he has his piano playing thing at the restaurant and then David goes back to the hotel room, and then Benji doesn't come back. Was he boning Marcia? Did this cross your mind?
Of course it crossed my mind. When he checks on her early on, I'm like, is he assessing her for bonability? But ultimately, I never got signals from either of them. You know how you just know, when there's something going on with coworkers. Sometimes you just know, and they didn't give us any clues or signals that there was awkwardness or flirting or they're connecting over something where they think it's furtive, but everyone else can see right through it. They never gave me that vibe. And he was very open with the fact that he hung out with her that night, the night that he was MIA.
And he's wearing the same clothes, that same modeled sweatshirt and those red shorts.
Oh, but doesn't he wear that the entire movie, though?
Well, they actually switch color schemes where David starts out wearing navy blue and Benji is wearing reddish or maroon, and then they switch at the end. I'm not exactly sure how telling that is, but his bed was made in the morning, so he did not sleep there. Maybe he was up all night and wearing the same clothes. So I looked at the camp tour, the Majdanek camp tour, as an entire walk of shame. I was watching how close are they standing? Oh, now they're awfully far apart. When he says, I was hanging out with Marcia, while you were fast asleep, dude. She's conspicuously on the other side of the room. They don't walk together during the tour. The tour is a whole other thing because in real life, Jennifer Grey apparently had a really tough time in the camp with the camp tour. Jesse Eisenberg talked about how respectfully he wanted to shoot that. Once they get into the actual camp, there's no music, there's no commentary. Yeah. Kelly Ray is providing the commentary. She didn't say anything. She's like, are those shoes? Are those all shoes? And she's like, are those ashes? Are those human ashes? But Jesse Eisenberg didn't have to say any of that stuff. But I was still watching the whole time, the whole tour. I'm watching Benji. What is he? Is this going to be the moment when he has a full-on breakdown? And I was braced. So that's the problem. I was bracing sort of the whole time.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point that his volatility adds just this undercurrent of tension the entire time because you just don't know when he's going to have an outburst. He seemed to have what I call a quote-unquote appropriate reaction to the camp tour.
Afterwards, on the train or on the bus when he's sobbing.
Yeah, doesn't he? I mean, and it's very emotional, but it's not like he's spreading it, like that he thinks it's so special that he's spreading it around or he's making it everyone else's business. He takes a quiet moment to weep over what he saw.
And I do think that was important. It is extremely important. No camp has ever allowed a fictional narrative movie to come in. It's not about story. It's all real. So accordingly, I think he doesn't have his outbursty moment as a result of that. My favorite, most telling moment in this, or one of my favorites in this movie, was the husband on the tour, whose name I don't know. He's the only one who didn't hold back his insights on Benji's, sort of condition. And at the end, he hugs the wife. Benji hugs the wife and then really aggressively smacks the husband in the belly. So he's not prepared for it. He's like, take care of this guy, and smacks him in the belly and makes him flinch because he's like really self-conscious. I felt that smack because I hate when people do that. And the guy like laughs it off or shrugs it off and then very deliberately turns and doesn't shake Benji's hand and gets on the bus again. Oh, man. That was the most telling for me.
That's so perfectly Benji. Like, it's so perfectly targeted to like evoke just like the most annoyed possible response. Like he knows your buttons. That's the genius of the Benji character. He can analyze you, assess you, and then immediately know what your buttons are.
But what you're suggesting then is that he has foresight, that he's so far ahead of these people, he knows, but he's literally pushing buttons, well, not literally, but you know what I mean? You said buttons, and that suggests that he has, that there's design there, that there's intent, and that he can't be trusted when he's on the other side of it and being like, oh, what are you talking about? Kind of casual dude kind of thing.
I don't think it's grand design, but I think he knows the buttons. He has the desire to push them, and then he's quick enough on his feet to improvise after that.
Maybe it's by necessity. We get to the roof conversation, and you see that Benji has to be in the moment. What are you going to do when you get it back home? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I have nothing, no plans, entirely in the moment. Maybe there's no foresight. Certainly there's no forethinking or planning ahead. And when the slap happens, you have to think there was some frustration behind that slap bottled up by David kind of being released. Like, even he was surprised by how how hard he hit him and how Benji took it. But you were bracing, right? Like, his reaction, Benji's reaction really could have gone either way.
It's kind of satisfying.
It is, but he also luckily caught Benji in an upswing where he was okay at that moment. And he's like, dude, you slapped me in the face. And then he says he's going to hang out and no, I don't think he has a home to go back to. And he says he's going to engage, but he's never been more cut off in his entire life. Benji is not going to be okay. Like, for all that David stepped in and tried to help him by going on this trip, I think all he did is pull him out of the muck for half a second for them to complete their grandmother's wishes, but he didn't help him in any way. He didn't give him the 24 hours of euphoria that he hoped that slap would provide. He just, he left him and he went back to his thing because you can't save a hoe. It's not his job to save Benji. The music ends and the ambient comes back in and he's just alone in the entire world surrounded by people.
I can't imagine anyone else having played the Benji character. Kudos to Jesse Eisenberg for writing such a beautifully complex character. But really, the credit is due to Kieran to bringing him to life.
So you got the non-Emma Stone producer of this movie for your panel.
Yeah, Allie Herding. Did Emma Stone, was she on board early or was she on board after it was acquired by Searchlight?
She was on board early enough so that, interestingly enough, Kieran Culkin was cast and then 2 weeks ahead of filming, walked away. And Emma Stone had to rein him in. Went and talked to him in apparently the way you must do to Kieran Culkin. And was like, no, it's fine. If that's your decision, then you do what you got to do. Just walk away. No, everyone in the crew will be devastated, but that's fine. Like, if that's what you need to do, then go ahead and do it. And he was like, okay, I'll do this movie. And he committed and did it. And that sort of soft-handedness or touch that Emma Stone had, which is, it seems like her primary contribution to this movie, being that this was Jesse Eisenberg's baby, is maybe telling and important. What is Kieran Culkin's deal that he would walk away from a small movie like this that's probably on a shoestring? But that's kind of Benji of him. And so wasn't sure. And to your point, all of this unpredictability, there was some improv, but that was from Jesse Eisenberg's hand. He constructed the character and the dynamic. And at one point, maybe considered playing that part and hiring someone else to play the David part. Like you, I can't see how this could have gone any better. He was such a mesmerizing performance in that you love to hate him or you hate to love him or whatever. It was a lot. And extraordinary, and I think justifying the Best Actor, Supporting Actor nomination. And I got to say, for all its nuances, subtextual nuance, there was a lot happening in A Real Pain that maybe I didn't appreciate fully the first time. And I watched it much more carefully the second time, which is why I think that I'm in a good position to lead this tour group.
Amazing, Wes. I really thought that you would have been so frustrated with this movie, so impatient with the Benji character that you would have written it off. I mean, a sleeper hit, but not unearned. It's small and it's kind of niche, but it's intricate, and it's a real filmmaker-driven piece that I think breaks through the sequel mania and franchise world that we live in right now. So we certainly can celebrate Jesse Eisenberg for that. God, Wes, am I sniffing a totally?
No, not, well, I'm always appreciative, I can't think of a better word, of little movies that could. A no-budget talkie where a lot is happening. And I'm thankful that I was tasked with kind of getting into these characters' heads, all in orbit around Benji, who, for better or worse, has a strong gravitational pull. My only concern is its disconnect from the on-screen themes of the Holocaust, and if that was the real pain that Jewish people, specifically Polish Jews, endured. And balancing that real pain, everybody feels pain, right? But we manage it. I take pills for my OCD, etc. And if that pain can be conflated or confused or placed alongside what a real pain Benji was. Thematically, that's a little bit weird for me, but I can see how it works.
Yeah, it is the theme, and it works on different levels. And they don't feel like they're conflicting. Like, they feel parallel to me.
So I will give A Real Pain a new ratings category. That I've
like,
conceived
you surprised me, A Real Pain.
Yeah, like,
And I'll join you for A Real Pain, and that's our discussion. 818-835-0473 or whatevermovies@gmail.com is how you get in touch with us, or whatevermovies.com for 300 plus additional episodes, especially if you enjoyed this discussion on A Real Pain. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, it's Miriam Love here, and I want to share something very special with you. Check out my new release, All In, the Spanish remixes, out now on Electric House Records. And always remember, be love, share love, all love.
Available now wherever you listen to music. For those of you who dream of a world where music and podcasts live together in perfect harmony, now, for the first time, Electricast gives you a magical compilation, Pod Till You Drop, Volume 1, where we give you the best in tunes and the best in podcasts. Feast your ears and hear the culture. Available now wherever you listen to music.
Electricast.